Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the DL. I am your host, Tyler Robertson, also the CEO and founder of Diesel Laptops. This is the podcast show where we talk about everything going on in the world of commercial trucks, off-highway equipment, all these traditionally diesel-powered equipment. But as you know, if you've been listening and watching the show and following along, we're talking a lot about EVs. And today's going to be no different. I'm excited to learn more. So today I have with us George, who is the Vice President of eMobility with Mack Trucks. And we're going to talk about what Mack has going on the EV front. So George, welcome to the show.
Very nice to be here. Thank you very much, Tyler. And yes, I say the copper era is before us. So the bronze era is gone. Now it's the copper era. Copper being the color of our bulldog, of course, for our EV products.
Well, this is a really exciting time because I think a lot of people didn't think EV trucks. They heard it. I think I was at a dealership and we had all this alternative energy stuff going on back in the day. It kind of fizzled out. But now EV trucks, it's not a future thing. They're actually here. Can you kind of give us a little lay of the land? Like what trucks are available? Are they available to buy? Are there some out there? Where are you guys at currently on the EV side over at Mack?
Sure. Let me give you, I guess, a little bit of back in time history lesson here. I think we announced our intention here on the Mack LRE, LR electric vehicle was back in 2018. And the LR electric, by the way, it's a refuse vehicle, right, for urban and suburban applications. I think it's good to notate that here in our beginning of our discussion, obviously for waste pickup there. And we started developing the truck back in 2019. We put pilots into work and for test and validation back in 2020. Then we went into production here in 2021 with serial production started commencing in December of 2021. And then most recently, we've announced actually our next generation LR electric with an increased battery capacity. And that brings us basically to today. And that's where we're at today, right? So we have our LR electric available to order with actually a few production slots still remaining for the year. So we even have some in inventory as well if you want one tomorrow. For today.
Well, so I got a lot of questions here, right? So
please, yeah.
Obviously, Mack's going with the refuse market. I see, Navistar kind of went with the bus method first, right? And I see Freightliner's got their e-Cascadias. Everyone kind of seemed to pick like a different initial path going down here. Why refuse? Why was that the first one that really got zeroed in on?
Sure. Yeah, it's an easy one. It's a softball question, if I may, but it's really easy for me. I'll say that Mack is actually the industry leader in refuse. If you look at the March data, we're about 36% of refuse business and 50% of low cab over vehicle sales out there in the industry in the heavy duty side, right? So what type of leader would we be if we would not push the technology envelope and the agenda here on our core segment of one of our core segment of ours? So that's one of the reasons. But then the main reasons is if you look at the application itself of refuse, it's super well suited application for EV. And why do I say that? It's a closed loop operation and it's a predetermined route that it does day in and day out. If you look at the average routes that we have out there for the refuse side, they're about 60 miles on average. And then they return home every night. And why is that important? Because they have a consistent place to charge. Then the other characteristics of the refuse duty cycle, you're doing a lot of start and stopping naturally, right, to pick up the waste bins there on the side of the road. So that allows for plenty of regenerative braking opportunities to recapture that energy on that application. So yeah, it's all about cleaning up our world, the refuse business. Why not do it with a truck that does not dirty it, right? So there's many good reasons why we went onto the refuse side.
So I worked at a truck dealership and I actually did some truck sales and I've worked with truck salesmen for a lot of my career. And, it wasn't really most times not a complicated thing, right? It was like customer needs a truck, spec a truck. You didn't need to get the factory involved, but you did as you got into these specialty applications, the heavy haul or putting a bunch of different bodies on these things, which is obviously what's going on in the refuse market. So how much of it a process now? Is it an easy thing to spec these things out, or is it a process where you have to work with the customer and figure out the routes and the right batteries and all these things? What's the process like versus a diesel when it comes to purchasing one of these trucks?
Sure, I do say that it's a unique process for sure. We do work very closely with our customers and our dealers, by the way, in that regards. I'll say first that we have a system in place, and maybe this is a little bit of internal lingo, but we do not allow green orders to come in. And what green orders means is there is no checking that's necessary to build up the vehicle. So we have kind of a stop gate in place for our LR electric. So every spec, every order is looked at thoroughly to make sure it's spec'd correctly. We also have a dedicated EV product manager that is in place and that works in a customer-facing role just for this purpose alone as the subject matter expert to, of course, assist our customers and dealers in speccing that vehicle. Then we also have a proprietary simulation software that comes into play. And what this does, it mimics a route here to ensure that this route is ready for the LR electric in its application. And if there's anything that needs to be done to that route to make it more accommodating for LR electric. And what I mean by that is, if there's an opportunity charge availability for that route to be accomplished, then we can of course engineer that into the actual route itself. And then finally, I want to say that it's not just the truck spec that, even though we're talking about the truck spec here, it's a whole ecosystem that needs to be configured and come into place. And what I mean, like perfect example is the charging and infrastructure, right? So bringing those experts to the table and that knowledge to the customer, to the dealer, to see what solutions that we have in place for charging and infrastructure needs as one example, but there's plenty more other examples as well.
So if there's a traditional diesel powered refuse company listening to this, like, man, we want to go EVs, right? And they don't know anything about it all. They got no infrastructure. I got to imagine it's a bit of a process there's a learning curve here and a bit of a process to plan and all that. How long does it take someone to kind of go through? How long should they think ahead before they want to buy EV trucks to go through the process?
At least 6 months. The reason I say that is the charging infrastructure bit is a change curve that we all have to go through in our system and our operations, and some of that has a lot of red tape associated with it. Sometimes it could take as long as a year, right? But 6 months is a good number to use, thumb of the year type of number to actually plan ahead. Definitely, the more the better, timing wise.
So can you talk at all about how many of these trucks are out there today working and what's the customer demand been like? Are people really excited about these things or has it been tepid? What have you seen out there in the market?
So first, I'll say that the acceptance of it, the vehicle itself, you get your butt in the seat, you drive the vehicle, it's overwhelmingly positive, right? The driving experience, the build quality, our integrated powertrain, I can go on and on. Then when it comes to the actual production numbers, I can give you what we have announced. We don't really talk about our production numbers for competitive reasons. I hope you can understand that. But they're actually out there, of course, running in the field. We have demos that are running across the nation, also in Canada as well. So we've covered it with a slew of demos that we have out there. And then we have, of course, units that are publicly announced that are running in New York, that are running in New York City, by the way, with the Department of Sanitation. And then we also have it with Republic there in Hickory, North Carolina. So to go a little bit around the other announcements that we've made, we have units that have been purchased down in Ocala, Florida. We have units that will be on the West Coast with Santa Cruz in California. And we even, like I said, have units in Canada. I'm trying to do the kind of the circle of the US to recollect who we have out there. And obviously the mountainous territory as well, we have it covered with it's EcoCycles out in Colorado. So another customer example as well. So they're out there in the wild.
Yeah. And, obviously, we can't have a conversation about manufacturing without supply chain. And I know order banks are pretty much full on the diesel side. A lot of it's due to chips and component shortages and raw materials.
Sure.
How's it on the EV side? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it kind of all the same? What do you see there?
Yeah, the EV side is not immune to what's happening out there in the supply chain, right? So obviously we have strong relationship with our supply chain partners, and we work closely with them, and not just reactively, but proactively to get ahead of the 8 ball when crises do come, right, or before they actually come. And the problems still exist out there. Everything from the famous semiconductors to devastating war in Ukraine to labor shortages. You mentioned the shipping. The Panama Canal story I got yesterday, that was an interesting. They had a bit of a traffic jam, and it's not like we can just fly a helicopter on a ship out there and grab our stuff out of a container, right? That's not a solution. So I do personally believe it is improving. I think it's because we're working so hard at it and getting ahead of that 8 ball to put some proactive measures in place. But there's always that darn Murphy's Law thing, and it's still have the problems.
So I worked in dealerships for over a decade, and I understand the value of a dealership, how much support, the knowledge, the parts, all those things. And as I saw all these startup companies kind of coming out last year and coming out with trucks, I'm like, man, that's a hard hill to climb. Trying to, you make these trucks, you put them out in the market, someone's got to support these things and do things with them, especially the guys doing the over the road EV trucks and sleeper trucks and that. So your dealers, how has it been there? I'm assuming they have to go through a certification process, or can any of them sell it? How are you guys handling that?
Sure. Yeah. Our dealer partners out there, we have a slew of them. I think this is a great asset that Mack brings to the table. So when you do buy that vehicle, it's obviously serviced out there in its application, wherever you may be using it. So yes, all dealers, you can go in there, inquire and quote at all dealers for sure. To actually retail a unit and put it in an operation, here the dealer has to become an EV, electric vehicle certified dealer. Obviously, safety is the paramount important topic to cover. So making sure that dealer has the right training, the right policies, the right people, the right tools in place, the right protective equipment in place as well. And training is a big part of that. Everything from not just the service side of the training, but again, I'll mention the importance of safety as well, safety training, and also a bit of the selling training as well. As we talked about, it's a bit different here on the EV side. There's a lot more to cover on the sales progress or the sales funnel. So there's some sales training to be had as well. And then I also made reference to the charging infrastructure. So when this truck comes in for service, the dealerships obviously need to be able to charge it, and that hardware of that charging system, and obviously any kind of investments that needs to be made on the utility side also needs to be made. And then finally, there is obviously some facility accommodations to be made. And what I'm talking about here is actually having a service bay for EV, having a battery area just in case we need to confine a battery, having a crane in place because these batteries are not lightweight batteries, they're not AA's, right? And have some common stock parts that are also in stock. So these are the accommodations for the facilities to be made as well. So it's an extensive process that we bring up the dealers up to this EV certified level.
So I think the interesting thing here is that usually when I've been talking to people about EVs, it's California and rebates and requirements, and they're pushing hard. But as you were talking there earlier, you mentioned a lot of states that weren't California that are doing these things. I mean, North Carolina is just up the road from us here. So I guess you got to talk about the economics here a little bit, right? So like I had, when I talked to Navistar with their buses, they're like, man, these things are 2 or 3 times more expensive, but hey, it's day one. The analogy we kind of used was like when, flat screen TVs came out, they were really expensive. Now they're super cheap. Is there an economic reason for people to do this? Or is it still the companies are looking at this saying, hey, we want to go EV, we want to be quieter, do things better for our environment? Is it that side? Or when do the scales start tipping towards the economics of this thing?
Quickly, diesel prices these days, that'll help, right?
Yeah.
But even before these abnormal diesel prices that we have today, let's just go back to days of $3.5 per gallon per diesel. If you look at the refuse trucks, first I want to say that the refuse trucks have a long life cycle. It's very specialized vehicle that typically customer keeps for 10, 15 years plus. So what I'm going to say is if you look at it without any kind of incentives, the payback is there. Again, at normal diesel levels, not at the high diesel. It's even better, of course, today, given the fact how high diesel prices are these days. But at normal diesel levels, the payback is there. Unfortunately, it's not until the double digits of years that the payback comes into play. Now you add incentives into the mix. Obviously, the payback on that total cost of ownership happens in the single digits. So really, what do you want to spend your money on as far as do you want to spend $100 to get that back? $100 more to get that back 10 years from now? That's not a really strong return on investment, obviously. So there's other values that come into play. So how does a company evaluate the whole carbon zero part of the equation? That's greening up the environment. Is there some value you put to that? And I'm talking about shareholder value, right? There is an interest, of course, for shareholders to invest in companies that are taking care of the future. So there's other values than just pure the economics, the TCO economics. But you are right. Yes, the technology is new. The vehicle is more expensive than the diesel equivalent. The return on investment is there. It's not to an appetizing level without incentives, but obviously there's incentives out there to be had, and the diesel prices at 6+ are helping matters tremendously as well.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the other conversations that always come up with EVs is weight, right? These things are heavier. And I know that's a big deal if you're hauling Class 8 stuff, your Class 8 traditional tractor trailer. Is that a big deal at all in the refuse market, or is the weight limits? I mean, these things got to weigh a little bit more, I'm assuming, than a diesel truck, or am I off on that?
No, they do. So you take away the engine, you put in the batteries, the net effect is still, it's about a 5,000 pound difference here on our side. But yes, weight sensitivity is definitely a real thing within the refuse space as well. The reason being is refuse companies, they go out there, they collect 10, 12 tons of refuse, and the vehicle needs to accommodate that. So we take that into consideration in our strategy to make sure that the customer's moneymaker, which is payload, is taken into account. We're not going to just take a truck and load it up with batteries to make it go 200-300 miles when you can only get 5 tons of payload on it, obviously. So we took that into consideration in the whole application here in our whole configuration of our vehicle.
So when you're talking to customers, have you ran across yet where a customer really wants to do it, and then you kind of start breaking the numbers down in the route and how much you need to haul, and you got to say, no, never mind, this isn't a good deal for you? Or is it kind of always worked out? Or what have you seen there?
Yeah, I think both, right? I mean, you're always obviously going to have ways to get around any kind of hurdles that you reach within any kind of route that you're looking to apply it. Going back to the opportunity charging that I mentioned, and by the way, we did put a fast charging capability on our vehicle to accommodate that ability. Now, some customers do not want to change their operation. You know, they want to push through the route and just do it in the 8-9 hours that they're working in that day. And if it's a very long route, this truck may or may not be able to accomplish that route. So that's why we have that proprietary software that I mentioned that makes sure that we are simulating that route. We understand what the needs are. We understand what the vehicle does. Is it a match or is it not? And when it's not, there's options that come into play. And that major option is opportunity charging that can come into being to make this vehicle, of course, extend itself in its capabilities and its range in that route.
So one of the added complexities you have is that you're putting a body on it, and those aren't bodies that Mack makes, right? So
Yeah.
what's that been like working? Can anybody get any body they want, or is there certain brands, certain manufacturers you had to work with on the
Sure.
body side?
So no, we stay very brand agnostic when it comes to the body side of it. We try to make accommodations as much as possible in regards to fitting various bodies on our vehicles. I do have to say that we've throughout the time we actually have a pre-configuration kit for certain body manufacturers that are out there that are quite popular with our customers, and of course that pre-configuration kit that you can spec easily on your truck grows with time. As a customer comes about that wants a certain body on it, we of course look at that accommodation, we make that accommodation, then we make that offering for a future customer as well. So we stay brand agnostic, but I think the big players that are out there, and they're definitely pre-configured kits for this application that we have. Now, today's LRE is for the side and rear loader. We do not have a body that is a front loader at this point in time. And the reason for that is the batteries that we position there behind the cab, we call it the gantry of batteries, that there's 2 batteries there and there's 2 batteries actually on the side of the vehicle. Right now, the configuration has those 2 and 2 batteries, as I mentioned, and it does not allow for a front end loader. But obviously, we look to expand that offering in the near term here as well.
So is there different battery options available now for different ranges, or is it kind of just, hey, this is the one model we have today in terms of how far they can go, and what kind of life expectancy can people expect to get out of these? I know you just talked about people hold these
Sure.
trucks around for a long time. I think that's everyone's concern is, oh, these batteries are going to be junk in 5 years and I got to replace them. But I don't think that's the case.
That's not the case. No, they're not built for 5 years and you throw them away. No, that's not happening. For your first question is, yes, there is one battery configuration for the vehicle. It's 376 kilowatts to be specific. And that is the vehicle that is available to order and buy today. So there is no option on a lesser or a greater battery pack at this point in time. Going back to your other question of how long do they last, here's the infamous answer within the EV space is it always starts with it depends. and what does it depend? I mean, obviously it depends on the duty cycle of that battery. How many times are you cycling it? How many times are you opportunity charging through the day? Are you using it one shift per day? Are you using it 24/7? So there's various considerations, of course, on that. It depends, and those criteria make up to when we feel the battery is reaching a point of time that we need to do something about it. And I'm going to give you those figures soon, but I also want to state first that what we consider a battery that needs to be treated is not a battery that's dead. It's a battery that is at 80% of its state of health. So when you first buy it, it's at 100%. And just like your iPhone battery, it doesn't hold a charge the whole day. The battery cells that are in there tend to die out. And when it reaches an 80% ability of the battery, this is when the flag gets raised for us to do something about this. And you don't just swap out batteries. You're not going to throw away the batteries that are on them, and you'll never throw them out, by the way. The first thing that you'll do is you'll refurbish the battery. And the second thing that you'll do is probably refurbish it again. But the third thing you would do is actually we would buy the batteries back and we would repurpose them for another application. It would not be going into a vehicle. It would be going into, let's say, a solar farm in a field, for instance. So there's other applications to use for the batteries where they're no longer refurbishable. And let's say they're at 80, 85% still capable, right? You don't just take them and then throw them out at that point in time. And then when they live their life in their whatever repurposed application, we would then recycle the battery. And the amount of minerals, which by the way, a lot of good minerals in those batteries, expensive minerals, are recyclable to the tune of 90% or greater. So there's great recyclability in that battery technology today. Now trying to circle back to answer how long do these batteries last, and the answer I gave was it depends. I'll say if you're using it 24/7 and not stopping at all, just charging, discharging, charging, discharging, you're probably going to get a 5-year cycle out of this battery. Again, reaching that 80%. If you're using it 1 cycle a day, yeah, it can go 13 years plus. So that's why the range is, it depends on how much you're using that vehicle. And just like the diesel, I guess, right? It depends on how much you're using the motor.
Okay,
Same consequence.
So diesel, I'm used to, like, these B50 lives or number of hours or number of miles. Is there a metric that people need to talk about when they talk about battery life? Is it like recharge cycles or hours of usage, or what's the best measuring stick?
Yeah, no, the typical measuring stick is years. And at this point in time, I don't think we're mature enough to say, how many hours have you used the vehicle, or what kind of kilowatts did you cycle through the vehicle? That's probably a more accurate measurement, but we're not mature yet enough to be able to quote those type of figures, or the industry be knowing those type of figures. So the more natural one is, hey, how long does it last? So it's the time element that comes into the measurement at this point. I'm sure that'll change over time. No pun intended.
Like everything. I mean, I'm excited. This is like literally the start of like a whole new era here of commercial trucks. So for me, it's really exciting. I feel like probably how people felt when the internal combustion engines came out, years ago. And I know Mack's been around for over 100 years. So you guys have been there, done this a couple times, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes. And actually, before Mack Trucks even started, the Mack brothers, they were dabbling with electric technology before Mack Trucks Incorporated, right? So they've been down that road before. And we have a rich history, of course, with electric vehicles. Let me state that as well. We are fortunate to be part of a group, the Volvo Group, which started the electric journey back in the buses back in 2009. So it's been a long time that we've been dabbling in this battery electric technology.
Yeah, so I know Volvo's kind of going a different route with the EV stuff, and Volvo Trucks, right? And you guys are doing the refuse. Can you talk at all, like, what's next, or is it just kind of, hey, we're going to dominate the refuse market, and then we'll worry about the next market in the near future?
Yeah, this is one other question that I wish I could answer, but for competitive reasons, that we don't comment on future production plans. But I will say that it's safe to assume that we are working on our EV versions of our complete product portfolio. I'll leave it at that. So obviously the plans are in motions to accomplish this. But I'm not here to announce any new products today.
Well, I had to give it a try, right? So
yeah, of course. No.
Hey, all right. So if people want to go, is there a website? Where should they go if they want to learn more about the LR electric that's going out there?
Yeah, obviously MackTrucks.com. That's the one-stop shop, right? You'll see the LR electric there, bannered at the top. Obviously, there's menu items to be able to search for the various specifications and any kind of news releases that we have. But then obviously the more impactful is visit your local Mack Trucks dealer, right? So that's also a very good resource.
All right. So just one more question from you. Are these bought in a different way now? I mean, traditionally you buy a commercial truck, or you lease it through a leasing company. Are these sold differently now, like as a service or anything like that? Or is it still just strictly I'm buying a truck and here you go?
So yeah, we have various business models, and there is a unique business model that's out there for this vehicle specifically. So yeah, you can traditionally retail it, buy it. You can traditionally, of course, finance it out. But what we've offered on this vehicle that's unique is this vehicle as a service, and it is a full bundled FMV lease package. So there is a lease behind there, but it's not just taking care of the vehicle, the chassis itself. It's bringing the body into the mix. It's bringing the charging and infrastructure into the mix. It's bringing the servicing and the preventive maintenance of this vehicle in the mix. The battery health and the battery guarantee. It's bundling everything that we have into one payment, and it's called vehicle as a service. There's a lot of collateral on mactrucks.com on this specific offering. It is unique. I can talk about it forever. It's probably another 30-minute section. But yes, that is a very unique offering that we have on this vehicle, and it's an attractive one at that.
Well, George, I just want to thank you very much for coming on here, having some conversations with us, talking through all these things. Definitely, again, start of a whole new era here. People are going to start seeing more and more and more of these trucks along. It's not just happening in California. It's happening all across the United States with a lot of manufacturers, and obviously Mack Trucks in the refuse market. They dominate it. They have for a long time. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited not to get woken up at 5:30 in the morning with a garbage truck at my house, hearing the brakes going and the engine thumping. So George, appreciate you coming on the show. And for everybody else, we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to call it an episode. And remember, it's not just diagnostics, it's diagnostics done right. And you need to start learning electrical. EVs are coming. You need to learn them. You need to understand what's happening here. There's a whole new world of opportunity opening up for everybody. So thank you for watching and listening.